Chapter 2278. The sword was clearly from China. Exquisite patterns were carved on the blade. It didn't look like it was used to compete with others. Instead, it looked more like an ornament. However, the sword was surrounded by a righteous aura. Everyone was suffocated by the sword's awe-inspiring aura. Chen Zhao frowned. The sword's aura was strong, but it was still within his acceptable range. However, the sword intent contained in the sword made Chen Zhao feel that it was very similar to the power that suppressed him. The few times he'd been attacked for no reason, Chen Zhao had felt a similar aura. Just then, everyone's exposed skin suddenly felt like it was being sliced. Matthew touched his cheek and realized that it was bleeding. Retreat! Retreat! We're enveloped by its sword aura. Chen Zhao had the same feeling, but his skin wasn't cut open. It was more like a dull knife scratching his skin. Matthew and Delia both retreated. Only Chen Zhao stood where he was. Chen, come back. Chen Zhao didn't move, as if he hadn't heard Matthew's shout. The sword, which had been hovering vertically in the air, suddenly pointed at Chen Zhao. Chen, danger! Matthew shouted anxiously. Chen Zhao's power was increasing bit by bit. The moment Chen Zhao's power rose to that limit, that strange yet familiar aura appeared again as expected. However, it didn't attack Chen Zhao directly this time. Instead, it attached itself to the sword. Confusion appeared on Chen Zhao's face. That power was too strange. It actually knew how to use other carriers. Just then, the sword's aura suddenly multiplied and stabbed at Chen Zhao. Hiss! With a piercing sound, the sword pierced through Chen Zhao's chest. This sword strike was too fast and too sudden. It also contained supreme sword aura. Its sharpness exceeded Chen Zhao's expectations. Chen! Matthew panicked. Chen Zhao was one of their teammates who could barely fight. Plus, he'd gotten along well with Chen Zhao along the way. Both personally and professionally, he didn't want anything to happen to Chen Zhao. It obviously didn't feel good to have a sword pierce through the chest. In particular, the sword aura on the sword was wreaking havoc in Chen Zhao's body. The sword's damage was similar to Chen Zhao's black trident. Ever since it was upgraded by Old Turtle, the black trident also had additional damage. As long as one was injured by the black trident, even if it was just a scratch, the black trident would inject a power of extermination into the wound, directly destroying the other party's life force. This sword chi followed the same principle, but its energy level was clearly a level lower than the black trident's. Moreover, in terms of weight, the two were not on the same level. There were a few Old Turtle cores embedded in the black trident. Chen Zhao could only activate the first one. Even so, the power contained and released by the black trident was even greater than Chen Zhao's. Chen Zhao didn't let the sword chi continue wreaking havoc in his body. Instead, he drew his sword. Unlike the first Silver Dawn, the strength of this longsword was not very strong. Earlier, when the silver daybreak pierced his palm, he could still feel the heaviness. The sword was extremely sharp, but Chen Zhao felt like he was floating. Of course, one of the reasons was that Chen Zhao's power had exceeded that limit. But the moment it was pulled out of his chest, Chen Zhao's palm was empty, and the sword left his hand. Chen Zhao was somewhat stunned. The sword seemed to have turned into a beam of light and escaped. Chen, how are you? Are you all right? Matthew immediately went to Chen Zhao and asked about his injuries. What? I'm fine. Chen Zhao blocked Matthew's careless hands. Are you really fine? You were pierced through the chest by that sword. It's a real chill. Chen Zhao ignored Matthew's question. His gaze returned to the sword. Right now, the sword was hovering in the distance, pointing at Chen Zhao. The sword aura it emitted was getting stronger. There seemed to be an invisible figure continuously injecting power into it. For Chen Zhao, even if he was pierced, as long as his heart was not hurt, the damage would be very limited. The sword aura it left in his body would soon disappear like rootless duckweed. However, if he allowed the sword to continue to grow stronger, it was very likely that he would really hurt himself. At this moment, the blade of the longsword began to reveal a pair of green dragon chi. The green dragon aura coiled around the sword, making it even more extraordinary. Seeing this, Matthew immediately exclaimed, "It's Green Cloud." You know this sword? Chen Zhao asked, glancing at Matthew from the corner of his eye. You don't know about your famous Chinese sword? Matthew asked, surprised. I don't. Is there a famous Chinese sword called Green Cloud? Green Cloud is known as the sword of the most righteous killer, Matthew said. The owner of the sword existed in the 8th century, which is the middle of the Tang dynasty. The owner was an assassin, but the people he killed were all people who deserved to die. This sword killed 999 people who deserved to die, not one more, not one less. In the end, it became this legendary sword, a sword of justice forged with the blood of evil people. Fine, Chen Zhao said. Maybe it used to be a great sword with a great master. But we're not people who deserve to die now. I don't think I deserve to die either. I don't want to die either. So it's not the time for us to admire its glory. In Chen Zhao's opinion, it and its master were both great. But they were people who were far away from this era. No matter how great they were, Chen Zhao could not just sit and wait for death to respect them. Just then, there was the sound of something slicing through the air. Green Cloud attacked again. It was different from Silver Daybreak, which made a huge noise as soon as it started. Green Cloud's attack was not only sharp, but also restrained. It looked like it was just a sword thrown at him. But in reality, Green Cloud carried a powerful sword aura. Green Cloud was about to reach him. Chen Zhao raised his fist and punched out from a dozen meters away. This time, he would not give it a chance to get close. This was also the first time Chen Zhao refused to fight his opponent in close combat. As a physical body, fighting a weapon in close combat, no matter what the final result was, he would be the one at a disadvantage. The moment the fist hit Green Cloud, it dispersed. Qing Xiao, on the other hand, was sent flying. However, Qing Xiao flew up again, and it was even stronger than before. Chen Zhao frowned. It seemed that he had to destroy Green Cloud to end this battle. Otherwise, the invisible enemy would keep strengthening Green Cloud and use it as a carrier. This change in strength was enough to threaten Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao did not like this feeling of being passive. Chapter 2279. Destroy it. That was Chen Zhao's only thought. Since this power made Chen Zhao feel threatened and dangerous, he wouldn't let it continue growing. But Green Sky didn't approach him this time. It seemed to have a certain level of intelligence. After suffering once, it would learn to be flexible. It also changed its attack method. Green Sky flashed, and a beam of sword aura slashed down at Chen Zhao's head. The sword aura looked ordinary, but Chen Zhao couldn't ignore the power it contained. Chen Zhao instantly threw out dozens of fist shadows that collided with the sword aura. The moment the sword aura collided with the fist shadows, space seemed to shatter too. The sword aura was shattered by the fist shadows, turning into countless small sword auras that spread in all directions. Everyone was forced back by the countless small sword auras. The surrounding ground and rock walls were cut into pieces by the sharp sword auras. Everyone gasped. They were at the edge of the battlefield. The small sword auras were already too much for them to handle. Not to mention Chen Zhao, who was at the center of the battlefield. Matthew was a bit surprised. He'd had a high estimation of Chen Zhao's strength. After all, he felt that since Chen Zhao could participate in the Battle of Holy Glory as an individual, he definitely wouldn't be weak. But he was still injured. Although he acknowledged Chen Zhao, he didn't think Chen Zhao was very strong. But now, he realized that Chen Zhao's strength was extraordinary. At least, he wasn't much weaker than his normal state. The sword auras had already dissipated, but the next moment, they returned to Green Sky. Chen Zhao realized that Green Sky's aura had strengthened again. No way. If it continued to strengthen like this, Chen Zhao would really have to use even more power. At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared on Green Firmament's blade. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. It seemed that even a legendary sword like this had a limit. As a carrier, Green Sky was already very strong. At least when Chen Zhao exceeded the limit, the Green Cloud could still hurt him. But it wasn't strong enough. At least it was facing Chen Zhao. As a carrier, the power it could withstand had already reached its limit. After this attack, it would be destroyed no matter what. But the power of this attack probably couldn't be compared to the previous attacks. Suddenly, Green Sky flew through the air. All the sword auras were restrained in the blade. The speed of this sword was so fast that it was hard for the naked eye to catch it. The blade of the sword became the color of a soldering iron under the friction of the air. Moreover, in the process of shooting over, The sword body was constantly peeling off pieces of fragments. Before it could reach Chen Zhao, Green Cloud had completely dissipated. However, its attacks did not stop. What Green Cloud dissipated was only its body. Under the condensation of the unparalleled sword intent, the enormous sword chi was more terrifying than ever before. He couldn't block it. Chen Zhao's eyes hardened. Chen Zhao rarely dodged an enemy's attack. Most of the time, he chose to take the attacks head-on. But this time, Chen Zhao really felt that he couldn't block it. Green Firmament's attack went from tangible to intangible. Not only did it not dissipate the attack, but it also became even fiercer. However, Chen Zhao was locked on by the sword chi. He couldn't dodge it even if he wanted to. Chen Zhao retracted his arms, and dark lava suddenly appeared in front of him. But in the next instant, the black screen formed by the dark magma was instantly broken. The sword chi didn't slow down at all as it pressed toward Chen Zhao. Although the dark magma contained a huge amount of power, its defense was not outstanding. But the moment it was broken, it suddenly shrank back and fused into Chen Zhao's body. Chen Zhao's skin turned from normal to inky black. At the same time, there were some red lines. Hiss! In an instant, the sword chi pierced through Chen Zhao's chest. Different from the piercing of the blade last time, the sword chi's penetration was sharper than the physical attack from before. When the sword chi pierced Chen Zhao's chest, all the sword chi exploded in his body. Pfft! Chen Zhao spat out a mouthful of blood and his body swayed. Chen, are you okay? Matthew hurried forward and threw a holy light spell at Chen Zhao. But the holy light spell didn't even cause a ripple on Chen Zhao's body. It was directly disintegrated by his elemental constitution. How come your resistance to holy light spells is so high? Matthew looked at Chen Zhao in confusion. I'm very resistant to all spells, Chen Zhao said calmly. Chen Zhao didn't have time to explain to Matthew now. His injuries were secondary. The main thing was that the sword chi hadn't been expelled and was still wreaking havoc in his body. Just then, Chen Zhao spat out another mouthful of blood. Just 2 holy swords are enough to make us lose our ability to fight, Matthew said solemnly. There are still 546 holy swords left. If every holy sword has such power, we'll probably all die here. No, even 10 holy swords can make us die without a complete corpse. Chen Zhao didn't reply. He didn't care what Matthew decided. If Matthew wanted to continue walking, Chen Zhao would accompany him. Although he'd been injured in the battle with Green Sky, he could recover instantly after dispersing the sword chi. As for the following battles, if every holy sword could use this mysterious power to fight against him, even Chen Zhao wasn't confident. However, if it was only at the level of the first silver daybreak, Chen Zhao wouldn't be afraid, even if all 500 holy swords attacked him together. However, silver daybreak didn't use that mysterious power. Since Green Sky could use it, it meant that not every one of the 500 holy swords could make Chen Zhao uncomfortable. Let's continue forward and see, Indelia said. If we really can't do it, we'll turn back. Matthew was also hesitant when he heard Indelia's words. He turned to Chen Zhao and asked, Chen, what do you think? I don't care, Chen Zhao said calmly. If you want to continue, I'll accompany you. But your injuries? My injuries have been suppressed. It's fine. Then okay, let's continue and see if there's a chance. Matthew looked at his 4 teammates. How's your recovery? If you can move, don't keep lying on the black liquid. In Matthew's opinion, Chen Zhao had fused the dark lava into his body during the battle with Green Sky to strengthen himself. However, he'd left Angie, Boantu, Alterando, and Fail lying on the dark lava. That was why Chen Zhao was so heavily injured, and even spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. If Chen Zhao had gone all out just now, he might not have been injured so badly. He didn't know that Chen Zhao hadn't actually used most of his power. Chapter 2280. I can move by myself. Angie stood up. She was too embarrassed to continue lying on the dark lava, and let Chen Zhao carry her. Boantu and Orlando were the same. Although they were still very weak, they could still move. Moreover, Chen Zhao had been injured not long ago. How could they let an injured person carry them forward? Chen Zhao didn't insist that they continue to rest. Although they were in the same team, they should support each other. It didn't mean that Chen Zhao was willing to let them lie on the ground while he fought and killed. Not long after entering the cave, everyone felt a wave of coldness in front of them. The bone-chilling coldness made everyone shiver uncontrollably. "This coldness isn't normal," Matthew said. "What do you think?" "I'm fine," Chen Zhao said. Delia, on the other hand, used her own magical power to protect her body, preventing the cold from attacking her. As for Angie, Bo-Un-Tu-Fi and Orlando, their bodies weren't in good condition. Moreover, they could only use very little magic, so they basically couldn't resist the cold. The four were already shivering from the cold, but they still gritted their teeth and persevered. Matthew looked at his four teammates in this state and cast a spell on them to help them dispel the cold air on their bodies. "This coldness seems to be attacking my soul," Matthew said. Even Chen Zhao could feel that this coldness wasn't normal. The activity of his cells also decreased in this coldness. Of course, neither Chen Zhao nor Matthew could pose a real threat with the cold air alone. However, the source of the coldness was probably the holy sword they were about to face. The holy sword at the back was definitely an ice-type holy sword. After walking for a few more minutes, they still hadn't seen the third holy sword. Instead, they saw a world of ice. They also saw the collection of the holy sword. In this world made of solid ice, there were countless ice sculptures as well. Every ice sculpture here was vivid and lifelike, as if they had a life of their own. Of course, they'd been frozen when they were alive. That was why they looked so lifelike. There were humans, mutants, magical beasts, and scarlet polluters among the ice sculptures. All of them had despair and panic on their faces. The postures and movements of these creatures were surprisingly uniform. All of them were running away. Some were trying their best to escape in the direction they came from. Some of them looked back as they ran. At this time, a wave of ice suddenly surged in front of them. The white mist with extreme chill spread out crazily. Everyone was caught off guard by this wave of ice. "Let's go! Let's go!" Matthew exclaimed. But this wave of ice came too suddenly, too fast. It was so fast that no one had time to prepare. Everyone was running for their lives. But the wave of ice had already caught up to everyone. In an instant it covered everyone's bodies. Oh no! Matthew tried to use magic to protect himself. But he found that his magic was completely ineffective. Under this extreme chill, it was as if all magic had been frozen. Chen Zhao also realized that he couldn't do anything. Soon, his body was completely frozen by the chill. What a frightening chill. However, even though the cold air had frozen Chen Zhao could not move at all. But Chen Zhao's body was almost unharmed. Chen Zhao's muscles tightened. The ice on his body started to crack, and then shards of ice fell off. Soon, Chen Zhao was freed from the ice. Whoosh! Chen Zhao turned his head and looked at the people behind him. Everyone, including Matthew, was frozen in ice. But they weren't dead. At least not for now. But in their current state, it wouldn't be long before their souls returned to the horizon. Just like the other ice sculptures, the probability of a frozen person coming back to life was too low in movies and TV shows. In real life, it was almost impossible to come back to life after being frozen. The low temperature would kill cells and destroy body functions. It could even destroy the physical structure of the human body. Chen Zhao was about to save them when a murderous aura attacked him from behind. Chen Zhao turned around and punched. It was a solid punch. But when Chen Zhao looked closely, he realized that it was a ground full of shattered ice. Chen Zhao wiped off the ice shards on his fist, a confused expression on his face. Was it an ice sculpture that attacked him? Just as Chen Zhao was wondering, there was another clear murderous aura behind him. This time, Chen Zhao didn't choose to fight back. Instead, he jumped to the side and dodged the attack. A huge ice axe smashed into the ground. Chen Zhao was attacked by another ice sculpture. An ice sculpture of a humanoid creature was chasing after Chen Zhao with a pair of huge ice axes. Chen Zhao kept dodging and retreating. The ice sculpture posed no threat to Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao didn't choose to destroy it immediately. He wanted to be sure that the series of attacks were the sculpture's own actions, or that it was being controlled. Soon, Chen Zhao realized that the ice sculpture had indeed been notified by someone. The sculpture didn't have any aura of a living being. It also didn't have a soul. So, it couldn't have its own consciousness. So it was just a puppet that was being controlled to attack Chen Zhao. Just as Chen Zhao was dodging unhurriedly, another ice sculpture attacked him. The two ice sculptures waved their weapons recklessly and attacked Chen Zhao crazily. There was no difficulty in destroying these two ice sculptures. But Chen Zhao still couldn't find who was controlling them. Where was it hiding? Chen Zhao suddenly stopped. He raised his arms and threw two punches at the two ice sculptures that were coming at him. The two ice sculptures crumbled instantly. Two beams of blue light shot out from the remains of the two ice sculptures. The blue light was very faint, and the aura was also very weak. The two beams of blue light merged into one and entered one of the ice sculptures at the same time. Soon the ice sculpture moved again. Chen Zhao took a deep breath. Then, he threw countless punches in all directions. The blue light seemed to be attached to the ice sculptures and controlled their movements. So it's this thing, Chen Zhao murmured. At the same time he punched out countless punches. The punches spread in all directions. Countless ice sculptures were shattered by Chen Zhao. The ice sculpture attached to the blue light was also shattered. Just then, a lot of blue light escaped from the ice shards. At the same time, they fused together and turned into a crystal-clear sword. The sword looked as if it was made of ice crystals. It seemed to be one of the holy swords. Chen Zhao increased his output and killed all the ice sculptures. Chapter 2281. There were many ice sculptures in the area. However, they couldn't withstand Chen Zhao's large-scale attack. Ice shards flew everywhere and mist filled the entire area. It covered Chen Zhao's vision. Because his senses were restricted, he couldn't know what was going on around him. There were also the ice sculptures of Matthew and the others behind him. Matthew and the others were in danger, but they weren't dead yet. So, Chen Zhao had to stay beside them and protect them. As for the thing that could control the ice sculptures, it lost all the ice sculptures and also lost its target. However, its true form should be one of the holy swords. Suddenly, an ice sword shot out of the mist. The ice sword's angle of attack was tricky, but it didn't leave Chen Zhao's line of sight. So Chen Zhao didn't find it hard to deal with. He casually punched. But to Chen Zhao's surprise, the ice sword wasn't solid. Instead, it dissipated into mist. The next moment, another ice sword shot out of the mist. This time, Chen Zhao couldn't detect the attack in advance. But the ice sword couldn't break through his defense either. But the ice sword turned into mist again and dissipated. Chen Zhao frowned. The ice sword wasn't powerful, but it was rather troublesome. It seemed that he was wrong. Chen Zhao had thought that the holy swords needed the ice sculptures as carriers to attack. But in reality, the holy swords didn't need ice sculptures. Even the ice shards that Chen Zhao had shattered could still be used as carriers by the holy swords. It was just that the method of attack had changed. The ice swords formed from cold air weren't the holy sword's true form. Even if Chen Zhao shattered them 1,000 or 10,000 times, they could reform and attack Chen Zhao again. Chen Zhao ignored the ice sword's attack. Instead, he sank into deep thought. After a few attacks, the ice sword's power had greatly increased. But to Chen Zhao, there wasn't any substantial difference. Hitting someone with a cotton stick and hitting someone with a sponge felt the same to a normal person. But this endless feeling wasn't pleasant. Especially since Chen Zhao's temper wasn't good. Normal methods of attack were obviously meaningless. Then he'd use another method. Chen Zhao wrapped Matthew and the others in dark lava. At the same time, he raised his right arm and opened the Eye of the Thunder. In the Eye of the Thunder, Chen Zhao had accumulated an enormous amount of lightning power. Even though Chen Zhao would occasionally use lightning to attack, Chen Zhao didn't care. However, compared to the energy stored in the Eye of the Thunder, it was nothing. Chen Zhao had only used 1/10,000th of the total amount. Chen Zhao's right arm was already flashing with electricity. In an instant, Chen Zhao released all the lightning he had stored. Bang! Tens of thousands of electric arcs shattered the air and spread in all directions without any pattern. Especially when it hit the ice mist. It already had an extremely high level of moisture poison. After the electric arc entered the ice fog, it turned from an electric arc into a net. The densely packed electrical net directly evaporated the moisture in the air. When the electric arc completely evaporated all the ice mist, the air became fresh. A sparkling and translucent ice sword fell to the ground. This time, it was not made of ice mist but solid. Chen Zhao picked up the ice sword, although he did not know the name of the sword. However, the crystal-like appearance was quite attractive. Moreover, this sword wasn't directly destroyed like the silver daybreak and green cloud. The crystal sword was still intact. So, after flipping it around a few times, Chen Zhao put the crystal sword into his personal space. Putting away the dark lava, Chen Zhao looked at the frozen Matthew and the others. Chen Zhao placed his palm on Matthew's frozen body. With a light push, a crack immediately appeared on the ice on Matthew's body. The next moment, the ice suddenly exploded. Then Matthew broke free. "Chen, what's going on? You look really messed up." Chen Zhao wasn't injured again. It was just that when Matthew broke free, the ice shards had damaged his clothes a lot. That was why Chen Zhao looked so messed up. "It's nothing. They're also frozen. You can do whatever you want." "Where's the holy sword? Did you fight the third holy sword again? No wonder your clothes are torn." Matthew looked at everyone's ice sculptures and shouted, "Sunlight." This was the most suitable spell for the current situation that Matthew could think of. Although the power of sunlight was very weak, and it did not have the effect of healing or purifying. However, it could melt the ice on the others. Not long after, everyone was also rescued from the ice, but they all felt different degrees of weakness. This made the team, which was already weak, even more tired. "Chun, I think we should retreat first and think about it." To him, Chen Zhao was already at the end of his rope. After all, Chen Zhao had destroyed the 3 holy swords all by himself. Plus, Chen Zhao was injured. After this battle, Chen Zhao was injured once. With his current condition, he definitely couldn't continue. "Okay." Chen Zhao nodded. Everyone understood the need to retreat. Only Delia wasn't happy at all. Along the way, Delia had been asking for help. She kept encouraging them to continue. But at this moment, everyone was exhausted. Even though they'd only dealt with 3 out of the 548 holy swords, it had already made the team, which was already full of injuries, even more difficult to move forward. Plus, there were more holy swords waiting for them after this. She hoped that Chen Zhao and the others could take her away. But right now she had no choice. When they'd come, they'd been careful with each step. But when they left, they didn't have to worry so much. Soon they were out of the cave. Chapter 2282. Chen Zhao was sent flying, right in front of Matthew. Before Matthew could react, he felt an enormous force pierce through his eyes. Chen Zhao was sent flying into the mountain wall. The entire wall was covered in spiderweb-like cracks. "Chen!" Matthew hurriedly rushed over and lifted the stone. He saw Chen Zhao lying on the ground. Chen Zhao shook his head and pushed the stone away. Then, he sat on the ground and panted. Matthew felt that Chen Zhao's aura was extremely small. He thought that Chen Zhao was heavily injured. "Chen, what exactly is attacking you?" "I don't know. I don't understand at all. Ever since I was transported here, I've been being attacked by unknown things. You don't even know who attacked you." "I don't know." Chen Zhao shook his head. Every attack seemed to appear out of thin air. Chen Zhao's face was blank. He didn't even know who it was. This made him wonder if it was a human attacking him. Matthew didn't think too much. He just thought that there was an enemy nearby. Chen Zhao most likely couldn't fight anymore. There was still an expert hiding nearby. This made Matthew even more worried. They could hide in the surroundings without a sound. Once it was disadvantageous to them, especially when Chen Zhao was attacked like this. As long as it was aimed at them, they would probably die on the spot. Matthew didn't think that he or his teammates had the ability to take such an attack head-on. Even an enhancer like Chen Zhao was weakened to this extent after being attacked like this, let alone people like them. "I don't need you to help me." Chen Zhao pushed away Matthew's hand. "I'm not that weak yet." Chen Zhao wasn't weak now. He was just suppressing his power to the extreme. However, even if he suppressed his strength to the extreme, his physical body was still at a monstrous level. However, to Matthew, Chen Zhao was just being stubborn. He was already extremely weak, but he still wanted to save face and suffer. Chen Zhao took a deep breath. He didn't know who had attacked him. But after he left the cave, this inexplicable hostility appeared again. This made Chen Zhao more and more suspicious. It wasn't someone who was targeting him. It was the world here. More accurately, it was the seal here. Perhaps he was treated as a target by the seal here. Thinking about it this way, it made sense. Since it was sealed here, and under such a grand formation, it was impossible for it to escape. There was no need to doubt his strength. Therefore, Chen Zhao felt that the seal might have misjudged him, and thought that he was the thing that was sealed. This was also very likely. After all, as long as Chen Zhao exceeded that limit, the attack would come. This might be the threshold set by the seal itself. Matthew's heart was heavy now. Apart from him, the rest of the team seemed to have no more combat power left. Delia wasn't injured, but from her previous performance, she didn't know how to fight very well, so her combat strength wasn't very high. We need some food. At this time, everyone was very tired, and the most effective way to relieve their fatigue was to eat and sleep. And in this kind of environment, if they were to sleep, they might never wake up again. Can you find food here? Chen Zhao asked Matthew. As long as it's not a human or humanoid, it's edible, Matthew said calmly. I found that some of the skeletons here are clearly different from humans. Matthew was from the church, but that didn't mean he was a saint. When needed, he could use all the conditions he could to keep himself and his teammates alive. Eating magical beasts or mutants wasn't something he couldn't accept. He'd eaten them in the past, and he'd eaten quite a lot. Then go. Be careful, Chen Zhao said calmly. It's just that. Matthew looked at Delia, then at his teammates. I'm here. No one can do anything bad under my watch. Chen Zhao knew what Matthew was worried about. Just like how Chen Zhao didn't trust Delia, Matthew didn't trust her either. To Matthew, Chen Zhao was a stranger too. But Chen Zhao gave Matthew a completely different feeling. There were too many suspicious points about Delia's actions. This was why Matthew didn't feel safe letting Delia watch over his teammates. If it was the previous Chen Zhao, it wouldn't be a problem. But Matthew was worried about Chen Zhao's physical condition and how much combat power he had left. If Delia did something wrong, would Chen Zhao be able to stop her? Don't worry. I'll watch her. She can't do anything. Matthew was still hesitant. Everyone needs to eat now. Okay, I'll leave this place to you, Matthew said. Matthew didn't leave immediately. Instead, he walked toward Delia. Delia, I'm going to find food. Wait for me here. I won't be gone for long. All right. Don't worry and go. Delia nodded. She could tell what Matthew meant. He wasn't saying that he wouldn't be gone for long to make her feel at ease. He was warning her that if she did anything wrong, Matthew wouldn't let her go. Matthew looked at Chen Zhao and nodded slightly. Then he turned and left. After watching Matthew leave, Delia glanced at the 4 weak people and walked toward Chen Zhao with a smile. Hey, Chen, you don't look too good. Even Delia could feel Chen Zhao's weakness. Different from his previous thick aura, Chen Zhao's aura was so tiny that it was almost negligible. Chen Zhao looked up at Delia. Do you think I'm so weak that even you can't beat me? Oh, do you still have power? How much do you have left? Delia's tone was somewhat provocative. Chen Zhao only glanced at Delia indifferently and continued sitting on the ground. I'm talking to you, Delia suddenly shouted. Put away your pride. You have no pride in front of me right now. What? You're not going to hide it anymore. Chen Zhao's tone was still so casual. Chapter 2283. Chen Zhao only lifted his eyelids slightly and looked at Delia, who was smoking. And this kind of condescending attitude made Delia even more furious. This anger even made her reason start burning. Red smoke kept coming out of her head. Red gas. As the owner of red magic, she should be able to control the red gas for her own use. But now she seemed to be controlled by the gas instead. Looks like you're not in a good state either. Chen Zhao's lips curled into a smile. How do you know I'm not in a good state? Do you really think it's because I'm not in a good state? Not because I'm in a very good state. The scarlet aura didn't just change Delia's tone of voice. It also changed the tone of her voice. It was as if there was something hidden in her voice. Do you think I'm being controlled by something? Ha! Delia chuckled softly. Oh, from your tone, it seems like you have a new explanation for your current state. No one controls the other. Everything I do is voluntary. It and I are just using each other. It understands my intentions, and I understand its thoughts. I know what I can get, And I know what I need to pay. Chen Zhao shrugged. Looks like you're a smart person. Chen Zhao had seen many fallen people. Most of them had fallen with pitiful hopes. Even when they fell into darkness, they still had a sliver of hope. They felt that they didn't need to pay any price, or that they only needed to pay an extremely small price to obtain what others gave them. Delia seemed ignorant and naive, but she actually knew better than anyone else. That was why Chen Zhao said she was a smart person. The one who made the deal with you is that red demon, right? Isn't it obvious? Delia didn't deny it. He wants you to release him? Haha. Delia let out a mocking laugh. I'm not that naive, and he's not that naive either. He wouldn't ask me to destroy the seal, because he knows that it's impossible for me to do so. Chen Zhao stood up with his arms propped up. Clapping his hands, he said, Then what's the deal? What? You want to deal with him too? Delia felt that Chen Zhao was interested in the power and path she had obtained. I'm just curious. Don't even think about it. You'll never get it. Delia did not believe him. Only someone like me, who practices scarlet magic, has the right to trade with him. Oh, why not? I'm stronger than you, so I think he'll be more than happy to make a deal with me. You want to get information out of my mouth? Or are you trying to buy time? You've said so much. Don't you want to say more? After I break your arms and legs, I will seriously tell you the contents of the deal. Bang! Suddenly, Chen Zhao attacked without any warning. He grabbed Delia's neck and pressed her to the ground. You! Tell me what your deal is about, Chen Zhao said calmly. Delia was shocked. She wanted to struggle, but Chen Zhao wasn't as weak as she thought. No matter how hard she struggled, she couldn't shake off that unbreakable power. But this guy's aura was clearly weaker than a normal person's. How could he still be so strong? Logically speaking, he shouldn't even be able to move a finger. Just then Angie, Bo Untafi, and Orlando all stood up when they saw the conflict. What? You want to stop me? No, before Matthew left, he said that whatever you do is right. Angie said coldly. We won't cause trouble for you. That's good. Chen Zhao nodded and looked back at Delia. Tell me about the teachings of you and the red demon. Delia stared at Chen Zhao hatefully, but she still relented in the end. She was stubborn, but she wasn't an idiot. And she wasn't facing an idiot either. I damaged a part of the seal. Then he released the red gas from the crack in the seal for me to absorb, Delia said. Red magic seems to be very harmful to the spiritual world and normal society. But in reality, it can't reach the level that people think it is, because all red magic relies on absorbing red gas as a foundation. You people are born with great talent and a powerful background. You don't understand how a marginal witch like me, who carries a sinful inheritance, struggles in the spiritual world. I'm weak and insignificant. I need to use all my strength to deal with a mere evil spirit, let alone become a top spiritualist. The more Delia spoke, the more indignant she became. Her eyes were filled with fury. Suddenly, Chen Zhao felt Delia's aura increase dozens of times. Boom! Chen Zhao was sent flying. Delia was already covered by the red aura. When I was sent here, all the bad luck seemed to have turned into good luck. The accumulation of the past 20 years finally produced good wine. Delia's aura was still increasing. This is the red battlefield, the birthplace of red magic. There's also what I need the most here. The red gas that's long been extinct in the outside world permeates the air here. I can absorb it without any worries. Every minute I stay here, my power increases a little. In just 2 days, my power has increased to an unimaginable level. And here, I've even come into contact with the source of everything, the red demon. The red gas I absorb is just released unconsciously. There's even purer red gas in his body. That's the power I've been dreaming of. Delia had already arrived before Chen Zhao, who was lying on the shattered ground. What I need to do is destroy the seal. 548 legends, Delia said calmly. Although I can't destroy it completely, with your stupidity, the 3 holy swords were still destroyed. Because of this, there's a gap in the 548 legends. The red demon also fulfilled his promise. He's transferring more power to me. He promised that as long as I can bear it, he'll satisfy me. Do you feel despair now? No, you're not strong enough, Chen Zhao said calmly. You're not strong enough to make me feel despair. Chapter 2284. This time Indelia wasn't angry. Instead she laughed. Then what about now? Indelia's aura skyrocketed again. It was an exponential increase. Her aura had already increased by more than 10 times. Now it doubled again. This made her aura even more terrifying, and the red aura even more intense. She was like a demon covered in red steam. She howled in the red steam. The 3 holy swords you destroyed weren't enough to shake the entire seal. But it was just enough for the red demon's power to pass to me through the crack. Are you sure it's your power? Chun Zhao sneered at Indelia. Ha! Are you trying to tell me that this external power can't be trusted? Indelia lowered her head and looked at him. And then you're telling me to give up on this power? For others, the scarlet gas is a deadly and strange poison. However, for me, who has mastered the scarlet magic, it is an unprecedented energy replenishment. I can absolutely use and control this power. I will also become unprecedentedly powerful. Even Zhang Tianyi, even the 23rd generation Blood Mary, they will have to surrender to me. Chen Zhao looked at Delia. As the saying went, the ignorant were fearless. This sentence was most suitable for Delia. She didn't understand what level Zhang Tianyi and the 23rd Blood Mary were at. She also didn't understand how big the gap between them was. That was why she dared to say such arrogant words. Chen Zhao looked at Indelia. You know nothing about power. You know nothing about power, Indelia said in disdain. At the same time, she lifted her foot and prepared to step on his chest. But the next moment, a golden barrier blocked Indelia's foot. But cracks also appeared on the golden barrier. It seemed like it would shatter at any moment. It was Angie who'd attacked. She spread her wings again. This time, her wings were pure white and flawless. There wasn't any red color at all. Indelia turned to look at Angie, Boantufi, and Orlando. Looks like you've all recovered a lot of magic. But are you sure you can beat my mom now? You can try, evil witch. Angie didn't hide her disgust for India. You still don't understand what true evil looks like. Delia let out a cold snort. Angie didn't want to say anything more. A dazzling light flashed in her hand, and then a long sword made of holy light condensed in her palm. The wings on Angie's back flapped, and she charged straight towards Delia. A hint of mockery was on Delia's face. It wasn't like she didn't know how to use offensive spells. However, the number of offensive spells she could use in the past was pitifully small, and their power was relatively mediocre. And as her power continued to grow, the number of spells she could choose from also increased. For example, even if an ant had enough ammunition to equip an army, the ant would not have enough strength to use it. But if this ant had the strength of a human, then it could choose many weapons. Chapter 2285. How dare you steal my power? I want you dead. Indelia was instantly enraged. This power belonged to her. She wouldn't allow anyone to touch it. But Chen Zhao had actually stolen her power. This made her completely explode. It was different from when she faced Angie, Boantufi, and Alterando. Against the 4 of them, Indelia treated them like a game. It was a suppression of power. She could toy with them as she pleased. But Chen Zhao had stolen what belonged to her. This was what she cared about the most. All the scarlet gas turned back into a terrifying scarlet giant. It was even bigger and scarier than before. The scarlet energy in the surroundings was also rising. But in the next moment, the dark magma turned into a curtain that enveloped the scarlet giant. The scarlet giant rammed against the curtain. Indelia's expression froze. She realized that her connection with the red giant had been cut off. The red giant had already used up most of her power. Now that the red giant had been devoured, she was even more furious. Give it back. The red gas around Indelia turned into a huge red sword and slashed at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao only glanced at Indelia casually. He didn't dodge. He just let the red sword slash his body. His body, which should have been cut open, stood there unharmed except for the cracked ground. Instead, the red sword fell apart, turning into red crystals that filled the sky. Indelia was shocked. Angie, Boantufi, and Alterando all had the same expression. Was this still the weak Chen Zhao? Shouldn't Chen Zhao be defeated by Indelia? Chen Zhao's aura was still small and insignificant. But now no one would believe that Chen Zhao was weak. That's it, Chen Zhao said casually. If that's the case, I'm afraid you won't even have the chance to face Zhang Tianyi and 23rd Blood Mary. Defeat them? Ha! Are you kidding me? Delia was shocked and furious. Chen Zhao's clearly weak, but terrifying power made her hair stand on end. You thief! You stole my power. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to defeat me. Delia suddenly realized that it was definitely because Chen Zhao had stolen her power. Otherwise, how could the weak Chen Zhao defeat him? There was no reason for Chen Zhao to win. Chen Zhao shrugged, not planning to defend himself. I will use even greater power to defeat you. The scarlet aura in Delia's body began to fill up again. Chen Zhao didn't take the chance to attack Delia. The red aura in Delia's body was still very small to Chen Zhao, even insignificant. But to Chen Zhao, it was like a supplement. It was better than nothing. This scarlet gas contained strong negative emotions, and it was very easy to incite people's anger. However, these negative emotions were nothing compared to the King of Wrath's bloodline. Chen Zhao also considered that it was probably because of his King of Wrath bloodline that he wasn't affected by the red gas. In some sense, the red gas was very similar to Chen Zhao's dark lava. It was just that one existed in liquid form. The other one existed in a gaseous state. As for the difference in color, it wasn't really a difference. For example, Chen Zhao's dark lava should have been called dark serum, but after it merged with the lava, it became black with a hint of red. Later on, the dark lava had devoured mutants or demons a few times, causing the black color to overshadow the red. So, the color of the dark serum would change according to different attributes and the host's growth. If the red gas was also the mutated dark serum of a demon with the King of Wrath bloodline, it was understandable. Delia's red aura was filled up again. She attacked Chen Zhao again. The process was different, but the result was the same. Delia stared at Chen Zhao in disbelief. Just like that, Chen Zhao faced her attack head-on. He didn't dodge or block, but her attack didn't do anything. To her, this was completely incomprehensible. Was it because her magic level was too low? Impossible. In the past, these spells would be catastrophic and destructive. The other four were dumbfounded too. They knew that Chen Zhao was powerful, but he was clearly very weak. How could he block Delia's attack when he was so weak? They couldn't understand. They couldn't understand. Chen Zhao just stood there listlessly. Looks like you don't have any other moves, Chen Zhao said calmly. Gritting her teeth, Delia kept staring at Chen Zhao. She really couldn't do anything. The most powerful spell was useless before Chen Zhao. She didn't know what to do either. Chen Zhao pointed at Delia. Are you ready to die? Panting, Delia looked at Chen Zhao. Her mind spun. Although Chen Zhao blocked all her attacks, he still couldn't move. But he hadn't really counterattacked. Even the black substance from before only wrapped around her scarlet giant, and did not attack her directly. Maybe he couldn't even fight back. Maybe he's just bluffing now. Chen Zhao had absorbed quite a lot of scarlet aura. Although Delia's scarlet aura was endless, it was still too little. To Chen Zhao, an extra drop of water in a lake didn't mean much. So there was no point in keeping Delia alive. Suddenly the ground shook violently. The vibration was very unusual. It interrupted Chen Zhao's next move. Rumble, the entire barren market was shaking violently. Zhang Tianyi rushed to the edge of the roof and looked at a huge ball of fire in the distance. Over there. Zhang Tianyi frowned. He remembered that it should be the location of one of the seals. It was the only seal that hadn't been opened yet. Wendy's expression was unprecedentedly serious. All 4 seals have been opened. How is that possible? What exactly happened there? What's wrong? I've already monitored the area. There's no one nearby at all. Why was the seal still opened? You mean no one has been nearby? Zhang Tianyi asked, surprised. Yes, what's wrong? Chapter 2286. At this time, even Wenda found the problem. That area was not remote. Judging from the number of participants in the Battle of Holy Glory in the entire desolate market, and the distribution of people, there should be people approaching that area. But the current situation was that no one approached that area at all. Wenda glanced at the place where the seal was unlocked in the distance, and turned back to the monitoring room. The scene in that area of the monitoring room was still calm, and nothing had happened. And compared to the changes that had happened in that area in reality, how could Wanda not understand that the monitoring screen had been tampered with? And this monitoring screen had been artificially modified, not by magic. There was no doubt that this must be AI Nancy's work. And AI Nancy considered that if magic was used to hide the truth in this monitoring screen, then Wanda would definitely be able to find out. Therefore, Nancy had used purely computer technology. This was the most important part. Wanda had a wealth of knowledge in magic and alchemy, but he knew nothing about computers. At least he didn't know anything about computers that exceeded the level of ordinary people. Wanda almost smashed the entire monitoring room. He had actually been toyed with by an apprentice over and over again. This was not a pleasant memory. Success! AI Nancy shouted in surprise. Although their plan had gone awry halfway. In particular, Scythe's death made them think that the plan had failed. But they didn't expect that the final twist would actually allow them to break 4 seals, without any danger. The black soul floating around AI Nancy let out a strange laugh. Chi-Chi success, it actually succeeded. The black soul seemed very excited. God's body. I'm about to have God's body. Just then another companion said, "Don't you think it's strange? Our seemingly perfect plan was actually riddled with holes. But such a flawed plan actually succeeded in the end. Don't you have any doubts? What you want to say is that there is another group of people with the same purpose as us." The black soul also calmed down. Isn't it obvious? Not only did the other party have the same purpose as us, but they also used our plan, and made up for it in our plan. Whatever, let's go get God's body first, the black soul said impatiently. From his point of view, as long as they managed to get their hands on God's body, they would be the final winner regardless of the other party's motives. However, at that moment someone else said, "Only the few of us know about this plan, but the other group also knows about this plan. This means that one of us has betrayed the team." As soon as he said this, everyone couldn't help but stop and glance at each of their companions. It seemed that everyone was a suspect, and everyone had a reason to betray him. "AI Nancy, you are the most suspicious," a companion said as he pointed at AI Nancy. AI Nancy wasn't so gullible. After silently brewing, she suddenly threw a bottle of magic water at Li Zhongshan. However, when the magic water was less than a foot away from Li Zhongshan, it suddenly stopped and condensed into a water ball in midair. "I said you're not strong enough, and you're not smart enough. You shouldn't attack an existence stronger than you. Do you think you can make me retreat with just a few words? Then what do I have to do to make you leave? Do you need me to cut off your limbs? Or step over your dead body?" Chapter 2287. Just as AI Nancy was hesitating whether to retreat or not, an unfamiliar voice came from behind. Li Zhongshan stopped playing around. AI Nancy suddenly turned around and looked behind her. It was a woman with short red hair, heavy makeup, and a low-cut top. The woman also had an Asian face. The woman just glanced at Nancy casually. AI Nancy felt like she was being stared at by a dangerous creature. All the hairs on her body stood up. Danger! This woman was extremely dangerous. "All right, Red Lotus, stop scaring the kids. Let's go." Li Zhongshan laughed and tried to smooth things over. The woman called Red Lotus looked at AI Nancy again, before following Li Zhongshan's footsteps. AI Nancy's expression flickered. She looked at the departing Li Zhongshan and Red Lotus, then at her companions. They didn't seem to know 2 uninvited guests had just arrived. They were still fighting each other, as if they viewed everyone else as irreconcilable enemies. After Li Zhongshan and Red Lotus left, Li Zhongshan's expression suddenly darkened. Did Zhuo Yiqing fail? I don't know the specifics, but he seems to have failed. Red Lotus said. What do we do now? That Zhang Tianyi wasn't thrown into the game as a chess piece. If he tries to interfere, we won't be his match even if we work together. There's nothing we can do. Let's go meet up with the boss first and see what he plans. Red Lotus said. The two quickly met up with their companions. The boss they spoke of was currently sitting on a rock, one hand on his temple, as if he was in a deep sleep. To his left was a man in a black robe. His expression was extremely ugly and somewhat annoyed. To his right was a woman holding a makeup box. dressing herself in front of the mirror. She didn't seem to care about the tense atmosphere in front of her. "Boss." Li Zhongshan walked up and greeted him. The boss narrowed his eyes and looked at the returning Li Zhongshan and Red Lotus. "Yes, you're back. What's the situation now?" Li Zhongshan asked. "Let Zhuo Yiqing speak." The boss said indifferently. "According to the original plan, we planned to send Zhang Tianyi into the Scarlet Battlefield and make him a chess piece before releasing the Red Demon. But for some reason, the teleportation device was triggered, and Zhang Tianyi wasn't sent in. Could it be that someone else inadvertently met the conditions you set, so someone else replaced Zhang Tianyi and was transported inside?" Li Zhongshan asked. "Impossible. Although I have set up a lot of teleportation devices in the wasteland market, that device is specially reserved for Zhang Tianyi. Moreover, that device also has a specific condition. Other than Zhang Tianyi, no one else can trigger it. Could it be that Zhang Tianyi triggered it, and then he cracked it? I believe he can break it, but that teleportation happened in an instant. He doesn't have time to break it." "You've explained so much, but you still failed in the end," the woman said disdainfully. "All right, now is not the time to blame anyone. Scheming against Zhang Tianyi is already very risky. Zhuo Yiqing's failure isn't unexpected." The boss interrupted the woman. "We can only take it one step at a time. If we really have to face Zhang Tianyi, then we need to prepare in advance. Don't act rashly when the time comes. Don't look for me if it's convenient to fight. I can't help." Li Zhongshan said indifferently. He wasn't completely powerless, but he really didn't want to fight Zhang Tianyi. With his combat ability, fighting Zhang Tianyi was no different from suicide. "It's best not to fight if we can," the boss said in a low voice. "That old guy is really too strong. Even if we work together and prepare in advance, it's still hard to guarantee that we can escape unscathed." The boss looked at Li Zhongshan. "Old Li, do you have a way to make Zhang Tianyi change his mind? How is that possible? I'm not an immortal. That old man's cultivation is so much higher than mine. Previously he was just scheming against me. I slightly twisted his mind. It's impossible for me to do it a second time." "That's right. Boss, since this mistake was caused by me, I have the responsibility to take responsibility. I'll deal with Zhang Tianyi," Zhuo Yiqing solemnly said. Are you sure you can stop him?" "Half an hour. I can stop him for half an hour at most." "Oh, Zhuo Yiqing, when did you learn to talk big? You actually said you can stop Zhang Tianyi for half an hour? Even if all of us work together, we can't guarantee that we can stop him for half an hour. You're just talking big." The woman began to attack Zhuo Yiqing with sharp words. Everyone was already used to the woman's words and actions. The boss ignored the woman's harsh words and seriously looked at Zhuo Yiqing. "Can you really guarantee that you can stop Zhang Tianyi for half an hour?" "I can." "Good, half an hour. As long as you complete the mission, I'll let bygones be bygones." The boss stood up. "Then let's move out and welcome the Red Demon. Bai Shui, are you ready?" The woman put away her makeup box, a rare solemn expression on her face. "Zhuo Yiqing, send us over there." Zhuo Yiqing nodded and casually threw out a die. It rolled until it was a 4. In an instant, the die shot out a beam of light that enveloped the boss, Li Zhongshan, Red Lotus, and Bai Shui. Then the 4 disappeared from Zhuo Yiqing's sight. Zhuo Yiqing's expression of anger and regret disappeared, replaced with a meaningful smile. The next moment, the 4 appeared in the sky above the scarlet battlefield. What a dense scarlet aura. It looks like he's really about to come out. What a powerful aura. Even if he hasn't completely broken free of the seal, just this aura alone is enough to catch up to Zhang Tianyi. Zhang Tianyi's cultivation is unfathomable, but his methods aren't as simple as that. Chapter 2288. Chen Zhao looked at the 4 figures passing by in the air. Chen Zhao's senses were restricted, but his vision was not. So when they got close, Chen Zhao had already noticed them. The boss, Li Zhongshan, Red Lotus, and the dresser looked down at Chen Zhao. Then they looked at Angie, Bo Untu Fi, and Orlando behind him. "That woman is a pitiful person abandoned by the entire world," Li Zhongshan said with a smile. "I only helped her a little." Everyone glanced at Li Zhongshan. They were already used to Li Zhongshan's bad habits. He liked to go around looking for special people. Then after giving them a certain amount of help, he would collect high interest. For example, India couldn't cultivate her scarlet magic. Li Zhongshan had arranged for her to be transported here. She obtained what she'd been looking for so long here, the scarlet aura. India thought that she was lucky, but in reality, her fate was already controlled by someone. Li Zhongshan had controlled more than 100 people like India. Of course, most people were being controlled by Li Zhongshan without realizing it. They couldn't give Li Zhongshan anything in return. But as long as one or two succeeded, Li Zhongshan would receive a lot of rewards. Just then the ground shook violently. A huge cross-shaped gash began to spread. A figure rose from the huge crack. The body had closed eyes and a head of golden hair. It was filled with divinity. Everyone had the same thought in their minds: God. The body that rose from the crack was God. However, it was just a body now. It didn't have any soul or consciousness. Has it started? Li Zhongshan and the others looked at the body. Just then red tentacles extended out from the crack. They were all formed by the scarlet aura. Only, the red aura was far denser than the one on Delia's body. The red tentacles wrapped around God's body. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. That thing wanted to take over God's body. He couldn't let it happen before him. Chen Zhao moved and charged toward God's body. But the next moment, Chen Zhao's head hit an invisible wall, and he shot to the ground. This is a crucial time. Those who are not involved, please do not interfere with our plan. Boss raised his hand and said. Chen Zhao stood up awkwardly. The impact just now was not light. Almost all the power that Chen Zhao had used just now was reflected back to him. Chen Zhao looked at the four people in the air, and then at the top of the cross-shaped crack. In other words, you are the masterminds behind this conspiracy? Was I also teleported here by you guys? After it comes out, it will be very hungry, so it needs a large amount of food to fill its stomach before it can communicate normally, Boss calmly said. And you, as food, you should act like food. Just as everyone's attention was on Chen Zhao, a beam of golden light descended from the sky without warning. Judgment sword, evil obliterate. Matthew held the blade of the sword that was filled with the power of glory, and the tip of the sword stabbed downward. An incomparably pure and holy pair of wings appeared behind Matthew. That divine power pierced through heaven and earth. But there was another figure faster than Matthew. Red Lotus moved and blocked in front of Matthew. Matthew's momentum was from above, so he could not turn at all. The sword was also indomitable. In an instant, the golden judgment sword pierced through Red Lotus' chest. But Red Lotus did not seem to be heavily injured. The judgment sword that pierced through her chest and back did not bring out blood, but strange flames. Matthew realized that something was wrong. He wanted to pull back his sword and retreat. But Red Lotus grabbed Matthew's arms, and Matthew felt a burning pain in his arms. The strange flames were spreading from Red Lotus' palms to Matthew's arms. Since you're here, don't run. Matthew was shocked. The burning pain was unbearable. Matthew suddenly raised his sword and slashed upward. The judgment sword sliced from Red Lotus' chest to her head, almost cutting her upper body in half. But Red Lotus was still unharmed. Her upper body had actually split into two bodies and two heads. Do it! Chen Zhao shouted. Angie, Boantu, Fi and Otto behind him moved at the same time. Boss glanced at Chen Zhao's group. I've been waiting for you. Boss slapped at them through the air. Boss's palm turned into a giant Buddha palm and smashed down at them. Chen Zhao suddenly sped up and disappeared in the air. Boss was slightly surprised. Chen Zhao's speed was beyond his expectations. In the blink of an eye, Chen Zhao had appeared behind Matthew and Red Lotus. Chen Zhao's fist pierced through Red Lotus' back. One of Red Lotus' heads turned 180 degrees. Idiot! As soon as Red Lotus finished speaking, she suddenly felt uncomfortable. Chen Zhao's fist that was embedded in Red Lotus' back was crazily devouring her flesh and energy with the mouth of gluttony. You saved me. Red Lotus was shocked and cried out in alarm. So stupid. The dressing woman suddenly put away her mirror and kicked horizontally. Bang! Chen Zhao was sent flying. The Red Lotus fire on Red Lotus suddenly surged. All of you die. Red Lotus was furious. Seeing the Red Lotus fire approaching, Matthew immediately used holy light to protect his body. But the red lotus fire was far more powerful than he'd expected. The moment the red lotus fire touched his holy light, Matthew's holy light disintegrated. The red lotus fire spread to Matthew's body. Ah! Matthew let out a miserable scream as he fell to the ground, rolling around and wailing in pain. Chen Zhao saw Matthew's pitiful state from a distance. The dark lava immediately spread over and covered Matthew's body. Chen Zhao could feel the dark lava evaporating and dissipating, but he couldn't care so much right now. Chapter 2289. Chen Zhao suddenly lifted his right arm. A ball of equally furious and terrifying red lotus fire burst out. Ah! Red Lotus let out a miserable cry and directly fell from the sky. Chen Zhao stared at Lotus in shock. He didn't expect this move to be so effective. Lotus's body had been burning with red lotus fire. Chen Zhao thought that she was immune to it. He didn't expect that he could absorb her red lotus fire through the mouth of gluttony and reflect it back. It had such an unexpected effect. See, I didn't expect to get revenge for you so soon. Matthew smiled bitterly at Chen Zhao. He also didn't expect Chen Zhao to defeat Lotus so easily. But you don't have time to relax yet. Matthew lay on the ground and looked at the two enemies coming from above Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao looked up at the boss and the dressed-up woman. The boss looked at Lotus on the ground with a terrible expression. When he looked at Chen Zhao, anger shot out of his eyes. Looks like I underestimated you. The dressed-up woman's aura grew stronger. She was clearly ready for battle. I haven't seen Lotus this miserable in a long time. Just then, Li Zhongshan said from the distance, Boss, this guy's life is too tough. I can't touch him. Don't be careless. Good. Very good. Light shot out of the boss's eyes. Yellow ghost freeze. At that moment, Chen Zhao felt like his body was filled with lead. Every movement he made was extremely heavy. At the same time, the dressed-up woman's skin turned dark gold. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. This was very similar to his own moves. He could fuse elements into his body. Just as Chen Zhao was shocked, the dressed-up woman's attack came. Fast. It was indescribably fast. Everyone's eyes could only catch a glimpse of a golden light flashing past. The next moment, there was an explosion from Chen Zhao's chest, and he was sent flying. The golden light sped up again, following Chen Zhao's path of flight with thousands of attacks. Boom, boom, boom. The continuous attacks blasted Chen Zhao into the crack in the ground. In the end, the woman kicked heavily, and Chen Zhao was smashed into the lava in the crack. Phew! Only then did the dressed-up woman stop, and a cloud of steam like smoke came out from her back. The gold on her body receded, and the woman took out the vanity mirror again, as if she had just done something inconspicuous. The makeup has all fallen off. The woman began to touch up her makeup, as if there was no one else around. Matthew was very sad to see Chen Zhao fall into the lava. At this moment, the red tentacles not far away had completely wrapped around God's body. Following that, the red tentacles began to disintegrate into scarlet gas before drilling into the god's body. Ahu, ahu, the god's body began to breathe heavily. The next moment, the god's body suddenly opened its eyes. It was a pair of scarlet pupils. However, his entire body rippled with an imposing aura. A golden wheel of light formed behind the head of the god's body. The body raised its palm and observed it carefully. Is this the body of a god? What a terrifying monster. The red devil had completely taken over this body. He was also called a monster by the world. But in the mouth of this monster, God was also a monstrous existence. Even though God had already died and only left behind a body, it still made him gasp in amazement. Greetings, Your Excellency Edalu. Boss slowly landed in front of the red demon and called him by his real name. The red devil was judged by the church to be a demon who would bring disaster to the world. However, few people knew his identity. He wasn't a pure demon. He had once been a member of the church and a high-level one at that. He had lost a power struggle related to the church's pope. This caused him to switch to the evil camp. He opened the church's dungeon and released all the evil creatures and demons that had been imprisoned. Every evil creature he released had to hand over a drop of essence blood and be enslaved by him. Through absorbing the essence blood, he transformed himself into an indescribable monster. He also triggered the church's first crusade. The Red Devil glanced at Boss. I've long given up on my human name. Then do you need me to call you the Red Devil? You can also be the Scarlet God, the Red Devil said matter-of-factly. The Red Devil said matter-of-factly, I like working with you Easterners. Even if it's a vow from 1,000 years ago, you still abide by it, and carry it out to the end. Boss had a faint smile on his face. Now, it's time for you to fulfill your vow, Scarlet God. I'm hungry, the Red Devil said. I've prepared a sumptuous banquet for you, Boss said calmly. The Red Devil looked at Matthew, and couldn't help but smile. He licked his lips. Then he looked at Angie, Bounty Fee and Alterando. The quality is excellent, but the quantity is a little low. The Red Devil's hatred towards the church was obvious. You can take a look at the entire battlefield. The Red Devil abruptly released his perception. In an instant, the entire scarlet battlefield fell into his range of senses. However, the Red Devil's gaze fell on the crack. What's inside? It was unclear if the Red Devil was talking to himself or asking Boss. It's just a roasted corpse, Boss said calmly. Suddenly, magma surged out of the crack without any warning. It shot hundreds of meters into the sky. Everyone was startled by this sudden scene. A figure walked out of the erupting magma. Huh, he's not dead. Boss and the dresser were both shocked. Matthew and the others were naturally overjoyed. They also didn't expect Chen Zhao to still be alive. They didn't understand why Chen Zhao wasn't dead. But this wasn't important anymore. As long as he wasn't dead, it was more important than anything else. The dresser put away her vanity mirror again. When she looked at Chen Zhao, her eyes were filled with anger. So what if he's not dead? If I can defeat you once, I can defeat you again. With that, the dresser used the same trick again. Her body was covered in a layer of dark gold. It was that unparalleled speed again. Crack. But when the dresser appeared again, she realized that Chen Zhao had already lifted her upside down. One of her legs was firmly held by Chen Zhao. It was clearly twisted. Ah! The dresser didn't understand. Everyone didn't understand what had happened. But this result really happened. Caught you. Chapter 2290. Let go. Let go. The woman was both shocked and furious. Enduring the pain, she kicked Chen Zhao from the bottom with her other foot. But Chen Zhao also grabbed her other foot. Chen Zhao didn't go easy on her at all. He broke it right away. Ah! Chen Zhao casually threw the woman to the ground. The woman scratched the ground with both hands, trying to escape from Chen Zhao. Suddenly, a golden beam of light shot toward Chen Zhao without any warning. The light landed on Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was sent flying again. Chen Zhao didn't know how many times he'd been hit today. Anyway, ever since he'd entered the red battlefield, it seemed like anyone could hit him once or twice. Matthew watched as Chen Zhao stood up again. It was unexpected, but also within expectations. He didn't know how many times Chen Zhao had been hit today. But no matter what kind of attack it was, no matter how many times Chen Zhao was hit, he could always stand up again. He really doubted if Chen Zhao's body was made of iron. He knew that Chen Zhao was an enhancer, and the body of an enhancer would definitely be much stronger than that of other spiritualists. But the few times Chen Zhao had been hit by were all extremely powerful attacks. Basically, he would lose half his life if he was hit by one of these attacks. But Chen Zhao could stand up unscathed every time. Just how strong was his physical body? Chen Zhao looked at the red demon. The body urine seems to be worth a lot. The red demon looked at Chen Zhao. It belongs to me now. I like it. Give it to me, Chen Zhao said confidently. It was as if the red demon had to give it up just because he said that. Matthew's face was heavy and worried. The red demon, and the body of a god. How terrifying would he become? Matthew didn't dare to imagine. And now, Chen Zhao was trying to anger the red demon. To Matthew, this was no different from suicide. There were still strong enemies around, not to mention the red demon. Chen Zhao might not even be able to beat the others. Just then, Indelia came to the red demon's side. As the red demon was unsealed, Indelia's power increased in all aspects. Her hatred for Chen Zhao had also reached its peak. The red demon had a disdainful smile. Clearly, he hadn't taken Chen Zhao seriously yet. The red demon pointed at the heavily injured red lotus on the ground. A golden light mixed with a wisp of scarlet landed on the dressing woman. The woman's legs were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Not long after, the woman stood up again. Then, the Red Devil used the same method to heal Red Lotus. The burns on Red Lotus' body receded, and she regained her former glory. However, the Red Lotus fire on her body burned even brighter. It was a flame that contained her anger and hatred. "You must first defeat them," the Red Demon said with a smile. "They're just a bunch of losers. Do you expect them to buy time for you? To buy time for you? You said I'm stalling for time?" The Red Devil was a little angry. "Kill him. Of course. It's our duty." The boss nodded and turned to look at Chen Zhao. "Can you stop struggling? Let us end this farce happily." Matthew walked over to Chen Zhao with difficulty. There were still large areas of burns on his body. However, he still came to Chen Zhao's side, planning to use his last bit of power to fight alongside Chen Zhao. "Matthew, don't come over and be my burden. Go and be a quiet spectator." Matthew smiled bitterly. "I still have the strength to fight." He didn't think that Chen Zhao could win alone. Even Zhang Tianyi probably wouldn't have a chance of winning in this situation. A demon that had taken over a god's body, and this demon couldn't be killed. This kind of combination was already a hopeless combination. There was also a group of mysterious, but extremely powerful spiritualists. He couldn't think of any way that Chen Zhao could win. Chen Zhao also revealed a serious expression. "Okay, if I really lie down, you can come and take over. Just be a patient for now. Don't push it. You'll die together." Red Lotus suddenly launched an attack. A flaming nova erupted from her body. Right now, Red Lotus was stronger and angrier than ever before. The dark lava blocked the flaming nova and wrapped around Chen Zhao and Matthew. However, the flames clearly countered the dark lava. This was also something that had never happened before. The dark lava was evaporating under the heat of the Red Lotus fire. Thankfully, Chen Zhao had a large amount of dark lava. After the flaming nova dissipated, the dark lava gradually retreated too. "Matthew, don't be a hindrance, okay?" Matthew's face was bright red. This was the first time he'd been called a hindrance. But it was the truth. Although he wanted to help, he couldn't even block one of the enemy's moves. But he couldn't even block half a move from the enemy, not to mention helping Chen Zhao. Suddenly, the woman also attacked. Her skin turned darker and had a metallic sheen. Her skin became darker and had a metallic luster to it. She didn't hold back at all. She didn't hold back at all. She'd already suffered at Chen Zhao's hands. She knew that if she didn't use all her power, she would lie down soon. This unconventional speed and power forced Chen Zhao to use even more power. That line. Breakthrough. However, what followed was an invisible force that descended from the void. It landed on Chen Zhao's head. Boom. But Chen Zhao was prepared this time. The ground cracked and shattered. Chen Zhao stood upright. The woman's attack had arrived too. Chen Zhao punched and the woman was sent flying. "Green robe yellow demon freeze." The boss roared. But this time, he realized that the freeze curse that had been so easy last time was actually very difficult. Chen Zhao paused. Once again he realized that his limbs felt like lead. He couldn't move. Moreover, the worldly power fell again. "Ha!" Chen Zhao roared and his power increased again. Chapter 2291. Chen Zhao kept fighting against the power of heaven and earth. It wasn't a good feeling. However much Chen Zhao's power increased, the power of heaven and earth would increase accordingly. On the other hand, the attacks from the surrounding people were almost negligible. The huge force landed on Chen Zhao's head, and then spread out from his body. The ground kept shaking violently. It wasn't just the scarlet battlefield that was shaking. Even the wasteland bazaar, above the battlefield, felt the tremors. The entire wasteland bazaar was shaking violently. The red demon's expression froze. He could feel the terrifying power emanating from Chen Zhao. It was power that wasn't below his. Chen Zhao also seemed to be fighting against an invisible enemy. Of course, the red demon wouldn't talk about chivalry with him. He wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. The red demon spread his arms, and countless spheres appeared in the air around him. The spheres were like suns, shining with golden light. Go to hell! All of the golden balls released a golden ray in an instant. All the rays were aimed at Chen Zhao in the center, Instantly, Chen Zhao was surrounded by the golden rays. There was no way to avoid the countless rays. Everyone couldn't open their eyes because of the piercing golden light. The golden light only lasted for about a second. However, everyone's vision only recovered after a dozen seconds. Matthew was even more anxious. He was the first to recover his vision. After all, his holy light magic was very similar to the red demon's attack to a large extent. They were all so dazzling and resplendent in gold and jade. So he was more or less immune to the gold. Or rather, he was more or less adapted to it. He saw Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was still standing there, but his entire body was covered in blood. His chest and back were covered in countless bloody holes. Seeing Chen Zhao's heavy injuries, Delia was overjoyed. She charged at Chen Zhao. "Watch out!" Matthew panicked. He climbed up with difficulty, but before he could take 2 steps, he fell to the ground again. When he opened his eyes again, he saw that half of Delia's body was leaning back. Chen Zhao's chest heaved. The wounds all over his body brought him intense pain. Chen Zhao's eyes were fierce as he scanned all the enemies present. "All of you will die!" Chen Zhao roared. "Arrogant! You don't even know that you're about to die." The woman suddenly launched an attack. The woman no longer held back. Her speed was so fast that even she couldn't react. Of course, as long as it was a straight line of attack, there would be no problem. But when she stopped, she looked down and saw that her right arm and shoulder were gone. She turned around and saw Chen Zhao's back facing her. He was holding her missing arm. She also discovered that Chen Zhao's arm also had a metallic glow, just like hers. The metallic luster slowly spread throughout his body. Giant spirit divinization. Chen Zhao's body started growing bigger, and gold started covering his entire body. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, Chen Zhao's power increased by leaps and bounds again. The earth trembled even more violently. Those who could fly basically flew into the sky. Those who couldn't fly couldn't even stand. Matthew and the others, who were seriously injured, were in even more pain from the tremors. Li Zhongshan's expression changed. He could feel the terrifying aura from Chen Zhao. Now he finally understood why Zhang Tianyi hadn't teleported in, but Chen Zhao had. One of the conditions for Zhuo Yiqing's teleportation was to limit one's strength. If one wasn't strong enough, they couldn't activate the teleportation. But Chen Zhao had clearly reached Zhang Tianyi's level. In fact, what he was displaying now was even more terrifying. Is this Chen Zhao's aura? Where is he? Is he releasing his power with all his might? Bifla saw that the entire wasteland market was falling apart. The terrifying power from the bottom to the top was constantly wreaking havoc in this place. The mirror image of the huge buildings was collapsing. The streets were cracking, and some places even had large holes in the ground. In an environment like this, casualties were unavoidable. Judging from the scale of the disaster, the casualties would probably not be small. As a newly advanced Shangqing realm cultivator, Bifla could clearly feel how powerful this power was. His own magic power was not on the same level at all. Of course, Bifla was also clear about his own position. In his opinion, Chen Zhao was a veteran Shangqing expert. It was normal for him to have a gap between them. After the Shangqing realm, the difference between each small realm could be several times, or even dozens of times. Of course, knowing was one thing, but Bifla was still shocked by this aura. What's happening? Damn. Seeing that his lab was falling apart, Wendy's face was filled with shock and anger. Zhang Tianyi strolled to the door with Kelly and Ivory. "Wendy, it looks like this place is going to be destroyed. Let's go." "Celestial Master Zhang, what's going on? Is it because the seal has been released?" "I don't know, but this shaking isn't because of the seal being released. Maybe it's related, but it's not caused by the thing in the seal." "Then who did it? Damn, if this keeps shaking, the entire wasteland market will be destroyed." Wendy and Zhang Tianyi walked out of the building with Kelly and Ivory. The building collapsed. Kelly and Ivory looked at the apocalyptic scene before them. The ground was cracking. The buildings before them were collapsing one after another. "Celestial Master, is this really man-made?" Kelly asked in fear. Zhang Tianyi nodded silently. "Yes, and you know that person." "You mean Chen?" "Yes, it seems like he's in big trouble. He actually used this much power." Zhang Tianyi looked up at the sky. Something seemed to be brewing in the dusky sky. Suddenly, an incomparably huge crack appeared in the ground. Kelly stepped on nothing and suddenly felt weightless. The next moment, Kelly let out a shrill scream, and her whole body fell down. Zhang Tianyi caught Kelly. "Be careful. You're dead if you fall from here." Suddenly a ring exploded in the sky. Then a pillar of light descended from the sky. Rather than a pillar of light, it was more like a lightning pillar. The lightning pillar was like a skyscraper that connected the sky and the earth. Zhang Tianyi's eyes widened, his face filled with shock. The beam of light was not very far away from him, and he could feel the power contained in the lightning beam. But what shocked him more was what the lightning pillar represented. It was a legendary scene, a heavenly tribulation. Chapter 2292. In the Scarlet Battlefield. When everyone saw the rock layer above their heads being torn apart, everyone thought that it was a way out. But a terrifying pillar of light descended from the sky. It hit Chen Zhao's body directly. The terrifying impact forced everyone to retreat in an instant. What Chen Zhao felt was thousands of times worse than the others. Chen Zhao felt the entire world pressing down on him. Even Chen Zhao's 10,000 techniques returned to one. Even Chen Zhao's dark assimilation, even his eye of power and mighty spirit form couldn't resist the immense pressure. The lightning contained in the pillar of light was ineffective against Chen Zhao. But what truly made Chen Zhao feel pain was the seemingly solid pressure. He couldn't stop it. He really couldn't. Even though Chen Zhao possessed billions of tons of power, it seemed so insignificant before the might of the world. Li Zhongshan looked at the pillar of light that pierced through the sky. "Boss, we don't need to do anything. That guy's about to die. His fate is continuously weakening," Li Zhongshan said. The boss heaved a long sigh of relief. He had to admit that Chen Zhao gave him a lot of pressure. Even if the four of them worked together, they might not be able to defeat that guy. But Chen Zhao's thoughts were extremely clear. Unprecedentedly clear. Chen Zhao's heart skipped a beat. This power definitely couldn't be blocked. Even Zhang Tianyi would be crushed by this power. Then he'd make this power his. Chen Zhao suddenly deactivated Mighty Spirit form. Instead, he used the same method to forcefully absorb this power. The basic principle of Mighty Spirit form was to absorb the spiritual qi in the world. The effects of Mighty Spirit form would increase according to how much spiritual qi one's body could withstand. Chen Zhao's current method was only a temporary solution. Right now, he had no choice but to be crushed by the power of the heavens and earth. He could either be crushed by the power of the world, or forcefully steal this power and make it his own. Of course, this was also very risky. This was a power that Chen Zhao had never come into contact with before. He didn't know the characteristics of this power at all. It was like a person running into a factory and stuffing raw materials into their mouth. Whether the raw material was edible or poisonous, no one could be sure. Of course, the cultivation system in the spiritual world was more complicated. If an external energy enters the body, can it create this energy? For example, Chen Zhao had to expel his current energy from his body in order for the worldly power to enter his body. However, after the power of heaven and earth entered his body, would his body be able to produce energy of the same quality? If he couldn't create energy of the same quality, no matter how much he absorbed or how much energy he had, he would run out one day. If his body could produce the same amount of energy, he would be able to solve his worries. However, this wasn't a difficult choice for Chen Zhao. It was a good choice between survival and death. Chen Zhao absorbed the energy into his body. Instantly, Chen Zhao felt a sharp pain. This energy was simply too violent. It was as if it wanted to destroy everything. All the cells seemed to be destroyed by this force. But Chen Zhao's huge life force also started running wildly and being consumed. Chen Zhao's life force was pouring out wildly. Once Chen Zhao's life force was used up, what awaited him was death. Suddenly, the evolution system in his body changed again. Chen Zhao saw it. He saw it in his body. He could see that every cell in his body was changing. The energy that entered his body was being cut into countless individuals. Then, the cells in his body started absorbing the energy in a regular pattern. Gradually, Chen Zhao realized that the pain disappeared. It was replaced by an empty stomach. Hunger. Chen Zhao realized that he actually developed an appetite for the power of heaven and earth that landed on his body. Chen Zhao started devouring the power of heaven and earth like crazy. The cells in his body continued to evolve and adapt to the power of heaven and earth. Suddenly, Li Zhongshan's expression changed. What's wrong? What happened? He didn't die. His fate is strengthening. Didn't die? How is that possible? How could he survive that kind of impact? The pillar of light was weakening. It was clearly weakening. But in the pillar of light, another figure was appearing. Chen Zhao felt something completely different from the Jin state. While Chen Zhao was still immersed in his different Jin forms, a voice suddenly rang out. Countless golden lights shot toward Chen Zhao again. Chen Zhao's heart jumped. His body suddenly turned pure white. In an instant, countless rays of golden light pierced through his body. Energy transformation. Chen Zhao realized that he could actually turn into energy. Seeing Chen Zhao's energy form, the red demon couldn't help but frown. Chen Zhao gave him a very bad feeling. Very, very bad. Chen Zhao also stopped studying his new form and turned to look at the red demon. In an instant, Chen Zhao turned into a beam of light and reformed his real body in front of the red demon. Chen Zhao ignored the red demon. Instead, he looked back at where he had been just now. Just now, he was about 1,000 meters away from where he was now, but he actually moved so far away in an instant. This made Chen Zhao very curious about his speed just now. It definitely wasn't the speed of light, but it was definitely faster than his original speed. Chen Zhao's fastest speed could reach Mach 40. He could jump more than 10 kilometers in a second. This was pretty much the fastest flying speed of current technology. But in that instant, Chen Zhao felt that his speed after turning into energy had clearly increased. But this was understandable. After all, after the body turned into energy, its mass would definitely be infinitely close to zero. The smaller the mass, the faster the body would move after being affected by force. You still dare to be distracted when facing me? The red demon suddenly grabbed at Chen Zhao. Not only had Chen Zhao's speed increased, but his reaction speed had also reached a terrifying level. The moment the red demon attacked, Chen Zhao also attacked. The moment the red demon grabbed Chen Zhao, he immediately turned into energy. The red demon's attack missed. But Chen Zhao's attack came as expected. Chen Zhao's palm slapped the red demon's face. Then, the moment the red demon was sent flying, his face looked like it had been burned. The red demon stood up again. Chen Zhao's attack hadn't caused any actual damage to him. The burn on his face quickly disappeared too. Plus, this body wasn't his to begin with, so he didn't feel any pain. But the red demon felt a strong threat. But just then, Chen Zhao's body changed again. Every cell in Chen Zhao's body seemed to be ignited. But this time, the cells didn't die because of the destructive power. They only ignited Chen Zhao's body. Chen Zhao was stunned. It seemed that the cells were digesting the energy. This time, Chen Zhao's body functions didn't change. He didn't evolve either. In other words, this was an acceptable state for his body. Chen Zhao started guessing. The explosive energy from the super fireball should be fire energy. After absorbing the fire energy, his body's energy form also turned into fire. If he absorbed energy of other elements, would it also turn into the corresponding energy form? Chen Zhao looked at the red demon and suddenly pounced at him. Right now, Chen Zhao was extremely fast. The red demon's reaction was also very fast, but speed wasn't his strong point. He was barely able to put up a defensive stance. Chapter 2294. Bang! There was a deep sound. Chen Zhao threw a punch. The flames on his fist weren't very effective against the red demon. After all, the energy was his to begin with. But Chen Zhao's power wasn't something he could block. Whether it was the red demon himself, or the god's body he'd taken over, they weren't known for their strength. After all, Chen Zhao had killed the god of strength before. And he'd done it with pure strength. Not to mention the sun god. The red demon was sent flying. His body ignited from the friction in the air, and fell like a meteor. The ground cracked, and flames shot into the sky. This time, the red demon stood up with some difficulty. Chen Zhao's punch had caused great damage to the god's body. What was even more terrifying was the energy on his fist. It wasn't the flames on his fist, but the energy hidden under the flames. That energy had caused a certain amount of damage to his soul. If the god's body hadn't blocked most of the damage for him, this punch would probably have destroyed his soul. The red devil turned pale with fright. He'd never seen such a monster-like human before. In the era when he'd been sealed, if there had been someone who could fight him or kill him, they wouldn't have spent so much effort to seal him. In order to seal him, they'd even used the body of a noble god to suppress him. He'd even boldly plotted against this god's body. It was because he was confident that no one could kill him. Even being sealed in the end was part of his plan. However, after being sealed for 1,000 years, he'd successfully taken over the god's body. He didn't expect to encounter such a terrifying enemy right after coming out of the seal. The god's body had already been severely damaged, but the red demon still used the scarlet chi to repair the damaged body. After all, the red demon wasn't a god. His power wasn't enough to repair the god's body. Therefore, the parts that were repaired with the scarlet chi were clearly distorted and mutated. Chen Zhao could clearly feel that the flame energy had decreased greatly after that blow. It was different from the other energies in Chen Zhao's body. Chen Zhao's yin and yang qi could be obtained by absorbing cosmic rays from the sky every day, and then converted for cultivation. Immortal qi was Chen Zhao's most basic source of power. It was obtained from the yin and yang inner elixir in his body. There was also the energy that was converted from absorbing the world energy. After absorbing the energy, Chen Zhao's body evolved. Not only could the cells store this energy, but they could also generate this energy on their own. However, fire energy was different. Fire energy was completely external. The fire energy was more like stale food. After eating it, Chen Zhao had this special energy temporarily, but it wasn't absolute possession and acquisition. On the outskirts of the battlefield, boss Li Zhongshan, as well as the heavily injured Red Lotus and the dresser woman, could all see the situation in the middle of the battlefield. They didn't expect that a nobody would be able to defeat him. Their partner, an ancient devil, couldn't even fight back. The Red Devil was definitely not an ordinary creature. He was an existence that brought terror and turmoil to medieval Europe. Obtaining the title of devil as a human, the Red Devil was definitely the first. The Red Devil that had ravaged the European continent for more than 100 years. But now, he was beaten up by a stranger. This made them somewhat unable to accept this result. Their cooperation with the Red Devil was the hard work of several generations over the centuries. It wasn't for this result. Boss, let's go, Li Zhongshan said in an extremely calm tone. It's not worth sacrificing all of us for the Red Devil. Of course, boss knew this. As long as they were alive, there was still a chance. But he just couldn't accept it. All the arrangements, the hard work of several generations over the centuries. But because of such an unexpected factor, an outsider, everything had gone to waste. All their blood, sweat, and tears had gone down the drain. How could he accept it? Boss, let's go while that guy's attention isn't on us, Li Zhongshan said. Right now, Chen Zhao's attention wasn't just on them. Most of his attention wasn't even on the Red Devil. He was still studying the changes in his body. Inside and outside the battlefield, there was a strange silence. Everyone stared at Chen Zhao. They were waiting for his next move. Chen Zhao had an idea. He condensed the energy in his palm. As expected, the energy gathered into an energy ball. Chen Zhao looked at the energy ball in his hand, and then looked for the Red Devil. He tossed it casually. The Red Devil had suffered once, so he was already prepared for Chen Zhao's next move. A golden energy barrier blocked the Red Devil's path. But the moment the energy ball touched the barrier, it didn't stop. It pierced through the barrier. The barrier didn't collapse. The energy ball only left a round hole in it. The Red Devil didn't expect the energy ball to be so terrifying. It actually pierced through the golden barrier. Boom! There was another terrifying explosion, and a terrifying shockwave. Chen Zhao looked at the location of the explosion, confusion on his face. The power of that energy ball was indeed very strong, but Chen Zhao paid more attention to its characteristics. It seemed to have a strong penetrative ability against energy, and it could instantly explode against physical objects. As for power, it was shocking in other people's eyes. But to Chen Zhao, it was only average. But in terms of consumption, it was also negligible. After a simple test, Chen Zhao roughly estimated his changes. In terms of power, Chen Zhao didn't increase much. Chapter 2295. The Red Demon could already feel it. There was a clear difference between him and Chen Zhao. Even with this god's body, he couldn't beat Chen Zhao. If he continued fighting, he would only die in an ugly way. But he knew that it was almost impossible for him to escape from Chen Zhao. At their level, their perception had already reached a terrifying level. Their auras were as eye-catching as light bulbs. It was even more impossible for him to escape from Chen Zhao. That was why the Red Demon had come up with such a risky move. That was to take over Chen Zhao's body. And if this plan succeeds, he could completely abandon this god's body. Chen Zhao's body was stronger than a god's body. Of course, as long as he obtained Chen Zhao's body, this god's body would be useless. But Chen Zhao was also waiting for this opportunity. Chen Zhao also grabbed the Red Demon. Looks like we have the same goal. Chen Zhao looked at the Red Demon. The Red Demon was shocked. He vaguely felt a trace of unease. But he didn't have time to think of a way out. He could only continue trying to use the red aura to invade Chen Zhao's body. But just then, dark lava spread out from Chen Zhao's palms that grabbed the Red Demon's shoulders. The dark lava started spreading above the Red Demon's neck, then his mouth, nose and ears. The Red Demon was shocked to find that his red aura was useless against Chen Zhao. Meanwhile, Chen Zhao's dark lava was eating away at the god's body. Even his own scarlet energy was being nibbled away. Looks like we have the same bloodline, but your red aura can't compare to my dark lava. Chen Zhao grinned. Same bloodline. The Red Demon was shocked. He knew himself very well. In the beginning, he didn't have any demon bloodline. He was purely human. He just absorbed and fused with large amounts of demon blood. As for how many types of demon blood he had absorbed, he didn't know either. Also, he didn't know what kind of special demon bloodline there was. As for the final transformation, and the process of turning into a red demon, he didn't know either. What he used was also ancient magic combined with some of his own insights. Now, after being exposed by Chen Zhao, he finally understood his bloodline. Actually, Chen Zhao knew the effects of the demonic bloodline, and the transformation process much better than the Red Demon. After all, Chen Zhao had personally guided the demonization of a few normal creatures. He had also done related research and experiments, although he did not know the specific situation of the Red Devil. But judging from the chaotic bloodline aura in his aura, it was clear that he had a very good chance of survival. He had obviously fused with the bloodline of other demons. Therefore, he could roughly analyze the formation process of the Red Devil. It was very likely that he had the bloodline of a king of wrath, and then fused it with the bloodline of other demons. I'm leaving. You're not bringing us up? Matthew complained, looking at Chen Zhao. Someone's coming down to pick you up. I don't have to take responsibility. You're too irresponsible. I'm not your father. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. After this trial, let's drink together, Matthew said. You should recover from your injuries first. I'm afraid you're going to be disfigured soon. There are many healing spells in our church. This kind of injury is nothing. Looks like my pity for you is unnecessary. I'm leaving. Goodbye. When Chen Zhao flew into the sky, he saw John Sr. fall from the crack. The two of them looked at each other and nodded as a greeting. Chen Zhao didn't keep it to himself. Chen Zhao also knew that the title of the most powerful person in the world, or even the most powerful person in all of history, was very clear. But at the same time, there were many unknown dangers. Without a guide, he could only rely on his own exploration. Who knew when he would go berserk? But if there were one or two fellow travelers, everyone would discuss and explore with each other. Then perhaps the road would be easier to follow. However, Chen Zhao's heavenly tribulation was definitely a coincidence. Logically speaking, Chen Zhao shouldn't be undergoing the tribulation. Chen Zhao wasn't weaker than Zhang Tianyi, but he was still weaker. If there was a heavenly tribulation, it should be Zhang Tianyi. But Chen Zhao did it first. There were many coincidences in the process. If Chen Zhao hadn't been transported to the Scarlet Battlefield and sealed, then there wouldn't have been so many things later. Celestial Master Zhang, is that seal the key? According to what Chen Zhao said, Can you use the seal to suppress it, and then use it to trigger the heavenly tribulation? Can I do the same in the future? Bifla asked. Zhang Tianyi thought for a long while and shook his head. There are too many uncertain factors. For example, can I have Chen Zhao's ability to resist pressure? Another example is whether or not I can be like him, using the suppression of the seal to trigger the heavenly tribulation. Another example is whether or not I can withstand the heavenly tribulation after it descends. Also, can I be like him, absorbing the energy of the heavenly tribulation and turning it into my own? In other words, Chen Zhao's method isn't good. It's not, but it's worth studying, Zhang Tianyi said. Zhang Tianyi said, moreover, the three of us have different Daos, so there's no point in blindly imitating him. There's no need to copy his method of triggering the heavenly tribulation. Even if I were to trigger the heavenly tribulation right now, I probably wouldn't have complete confidence in passing it. However, Chen Zhao's experiences are truly priceless treasures for us. Now that you mention it, I think I should open a paid course. It should be good. Zhang Tianyi and Bifla couldn't help but roll their eyes. Even if Chen Zhao really opened a paid course for the heavenly tribulation, the number of spiritualists who could understand it could be counted on one hand. As for the people who could really use it, apart from Zhang Tianyi and Bifla, only 23rd generation Blood Mary would be useful. By the way, you guys said before that the appearance of a Shangqing realm expert in a few hundred years is already considered the peak of the spiritual world. But in this era, the three of us, 23rd generation Blood Mary, and Old John, who's close to Shangqing realm, far surpasses any era in the past. Does this count as a flourishing era? Usually, the flourishing era of the spiritual world appears in the middle or late stages of the spiritual qi tide. Our era is only in the middle or early stages of the spiritual qi tide. Based on the density of the spiritual qi in the world, it's far from the peak of the spiritual world. If there's no special reason, it can only be a coincidence that several Shangqing realm experts have appeared in the world at the same time. Please don't tell me there's some demon king that needs many experts to work together to suppress him. That's why there are so many experts in this era. It's always like that in movies and TV shows. Maybe that's you. Everyone was in a good mood. As for the catastrophic damage that Chen Zhao had indirectly caused, the three didn't seem to care at all. Chen Zhao didn't feel guilty at all. It wasn't because of his subjective reasons anyway. Moreover, after the incident, Chen Zhao had actively reduced the damage. In terms of responsibility, Zhang Tianyi, as one of the people in charge, was definitely more responsible than him. Chapter 2298. The next day, Didira and Feilai went to the supermarket to buy two gifts. One was a tie for Clive, and the other was a scarf for Ampa. Let's go here. Feilai and Didira found Clive's house. A row of white fences surrounded the yard. Inside was a white two-story house. Didira pressed the doorbell. Just then, the curtains in the house opened, and someone peeked inside. Then a woman ran out from the inside. You're Didira? Ampa quickly recognized Didira. Ms. Ampa, I'm Didira. I'm glad you still recognize me. I didn't expect you to be so old. Sorry, who's this? This is Auntie Feilai. Of course, she's my adoptive mother in name, Didira said with a smile. Hello, Ms. Feilai. I'm Ampa. Hello, Ms. Ampa. Ms. Ampa, don't you know that we live in Mountain Town too? Didira realized that Ampa was very surprised to see her. Didn't Mr. Clive tell you? He went to see me yesterday. Ah, does Clive know? Never mind. Maybe Mr. Clive was too busy and didn't tell you about it. Feilai smiled and patted Didira's back. Ms. Ampa, Auntie Feilai and I are giving this to you and Mr. Clive. Ampa accepted the gift, looking a bit flustered and embarrassed. Sorry, the house is a bit messy. I'm afraid it's not convenient for you to come in. It's okay. We're just passing by and came to see you, Didira said considerately. Clive is in school right now and isn't home today. If it's okay, can you come this weekend? Or Clive and I can go over. Ampa looked at Didira nervously. She liked children, and had a deep impression of Didira. For her, for every child she liked, She would fantasize about how great it would be if the child was hers. So Ampa was very happy that Didira came to see her. But there were some things in the house that she couldn't let them see. So Ampa was both happy and troubled. Of course, Phalai agreed for Didira. After all, Amber and Clive were not bad people. Although he didn't have much contact with them, he could tell that they weren't bad people. After exchanging contact information, Phalai left with Didira. Ampa stood in front of the door and watched Phalai and Didila's car drive away, before he hurried back into the house. When Ampa returned to the room, he saw a large pot emitting green gas. Not bad, not bad. Ampa once again threw himself into the work of making magic potions. It was the same beach and the same umbrella. Chun and the 23rd generation Blood Mary sat under the parasol and watched the tide come and go. The 23rd Blood Mary was looking for Chun because she wanted to find out how Chun had gone through the heavenly tribulation. Even though Chun had already told Bifla and Zhang Tianyi about it, Chun was still worried about Zhang Tianyi. However, there were some details that Mary still wanted to ask Chun personally. She wasn't sure if she would be able to use these experiences in this life. However, to her, the heavenly tribulation that Chun had experienced was definitely a priceless treasure.